Hello everyone, I know you watched this video to accompany you to sleep. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to tell me where you are from and what time you watched this video. Let's jump straight into the story. Story 1. On the night of March 26, 2002, in Zhejiang's Wangzi village, Zhaoyuan County, Shandong Province, China, a woman's scream suddenly pierced the air. Murder. After receiving reports from villagers, local police quickly arrived at the scene. At a single-story house on the east end of the village, a crowd had gathered. Police cordoned off the area and entered the house. The sight that greeted them made everyone present shudder. On an old bed lay a young couple, motionless and no longer breathing. Both had suffered severe injuries, with the woman's face so badly mutilated it was unrecognizable. The scene was utterly gruesome. The investigation progressed rapidly, and the identity of the killer, along with the murder weapon, a sharp axe, was soon revealed. However, the truth that came to light stunned even the most seasoned investigators. The perpetrator was none other than the homeowner, Zhao Yuling. The victims on the bed were his own daughter, Zhao Qingxiang, and her husband Wei Bin. The heart-wrenching scream that had broken the silence came from the first person to discover the scene, Su Guixin, Qingxiang's mother. Upon witnessing the bloody scene before her, she collapsed and fainted on the spot, unable to bear the shock. Yet just a few days before the tragedy, Guixin had been proudly telling everyone that her daughter, Zhao Qingxiang, and son-in-law were visiting from America. Everyone envied her for having such a successful daughter. Who could have imagined that in just a matter of days, this family would be struck by such a devastating tragedy? During the investigation, police interviewed the neighbors of the victim's family. They reported that in the 2 days leading up to the incident, loud arguments could be heard coming from the Zhao household. Yuling had been heard berating his daughter harshly, and people had seen Qingxiang crying, her eyes red with tears. When news of this case broke, it became headline news. People were discussing it everywhere, wondering how there could be such a father in this world. We don't know how much hatred this father had for his daughter, but we can imagine that the problems existing in this family were certainly not just a matter of 1 or 2 days. So what happened to this family? Zhao Qingxiang was born in 1972 in a remote rural area of Shandong Province, China. At that time, the idea of favoring boys over girls was very common. There was even a saying, if a daughter is born, the father will be so angry he won't be able to swallow his food. This saying reflected the bitter reality of a girl's value in the old society. Her father, Yuling, was the embodiment of outdated, feudal thinking. When Qingxiang was born, instead of a joyful welcome, he showed only utter disappointment and turned away. In his mind, and in many people's minds at that time, only sons could be relied upon in old age and inherit the family legacy. In their eyes, daughters were no different from spilled water, eventually belonging to another family after marriage. Therefore, from the moment she was born, Qingxiang was unwelcome, an unwanted presence in the family. 2 years later, Zhao Yuling finally realized his wish when his wife gave birth to a son named Zhao Qingchuan. He threw a big party, inviting guests from all around, as if he wanted the whole world to know, have a son. Clearly, with a son in the family, the parents' hearts leaned towards one side. The daughter, Qingxiang, became like a burden no one cared about. At just 2 years old, she was left in the care of her elderly grandmother. When the son was born, joy filled Yuling's heart. Every day he was beaming, his mouth stretched in a constant smile. He would place his son on his shoulders, proudly parading around the village, as if to show off his precious child to the world. All the best and most nutritious things were prioritized for the boy. But fate had other plans. When Qingchuan was 3 years old, he unfortunately contracted meningitis. In today's world, this might not be such a big problem. But at that time, the local medical standards were quite backward. Doctors even treated meningitis as if it were a common fever. As a result, the illness kept recurring, forcing the Zhao family to borrow money from everywhere for treatment. Despite this, the disease was not fully cured and left behind epilepsy as a complication, which would flare up from time to time. Epilepsy is a neurological disorder characterized by recurring seizures, which can be long or short. During an attack, if there's no one around to support or help control the person, it can cause falls and even bone fractures. This terrible disease not only tormented the child's body, but also became a mental burden weighing on the entire family for many years to come. Zhao Yuling, with a heart heavy with disappointment, couldn't hide his sadness and dissatisfaction. In his outbursts of anger, he often vented his fury on Qingxiang, making her the victim of unwarranted beatings. Growing up in such an environment, Qingxiang gradually became withdrawn and quiet. However, the light of knowledge opened a new path for the young girl. When she stepped into school, it was like a rebirth. Her teachers became beacons, illuminating the way forward for Qingxiang. The saying, "reading changes destiny," became her guiding principle, deeply ingrained in her mind. From a young age, Qingxiang was very diligent, studying hard and often achieving the highest scores in exams. But even so, she still couldn't please her parents. Yuling even wanted her to drop out of school. He begrudged the tuition fees and wanted to save all the money for his sick son. Fortunately, kind neighbors intervened, helping Yuling see the issue from a different perspective. They pointed out that with Qingxiang's talent and diligence, her future was sure to be bright. The money she would earn in the future would far exceed what the family could get if they made her quit school to work now. Faced with this logical advice and to save face, Yuling reluctantly agreed to let his daughter continue her education. Deep down, he began to nurture the hope that one day she would become an effective money-making machine for the family. Thanks to this decision, Qingxiang had the opportunity to enter high school. She deeply understood that this was a precious chance to change her fate, to escape poverty and the constraints of traditional family life. With determination, she poured all her efforts into studying, while also working part-time to reduce the burden on her family. In 1987, she brilliantly became the top student in the entire county and was admitted to a prestigious city high school. For the next 3 years, she persevered in her studies, working and studying simultaneously, never ceasing to strive. Finally, Qingxiang's efforts were rewarded. In 1990, she passed the entrance exam and was admitted to the chemistry department of Nankai University with excellent achievement. At that time, the probability of a college student coming from a rural background was very low. In 1990, 2.83 million people in China took the college entrance exam, but only 610,000 were admitted, a mere 22% acceptance rate. Moreover, since 1952, Nankai University had become a key national university. Therefore, a college student like Qingxiang was truly a source of pride for the family. In their village, it was a cause for great celebration. At that time, she was the first college student from the entire village. For a while, villagers rushed to the Zhao house to offer congratulations. Some said that having a daughter admitted to a prestigious university was a great achievement for the father. Others said that Qingxiang would surely be successful and earn a lot of money in the future, allowing her elderly parents to enjoy a comfortable life. This time, Zhao Yuling heard nothing but praise, and he felt somewhat elated. He began to dream that the whole family could rely on this daughter in the future. So he told Zhao Qingxiang that she must earn money to support the family and her brother after graduation. Carrying this heavy expectation, Qingxiang boarded the train to Tianjin with a heart full of passion but also anxiety. She understood that from this moment on, everything depended on herself. Despite growing up in a family that favored sons over daughters and facing unfair treatment from a young age, Qingxiang was a very responsible child. She felt she should do her utmost for her family. As the elder sister, she absolutely couldn't neglect her sick brother. For Qingxiang, who had just stepped out of the mountains, coming to a big city for the first time was a significant culture shock. During her college years, Qingxiang constantly worked part-time as a tutor and waitress while studying diligently. She hardly spent any of her family's money, and even managed to send some of her earnings back home. On weekends, when other classmates were out having fun, Qingxiang was either working or in the school library studying, or in the laboratory conducting experiments. Throughout her 4 years in college, her name appeared on the scholarship list every semester. This hardworking and ambitious girl also found love, which she hadn't initially expected. A male classmate named Weibin developed feelings for Qingxiang. Weibin was a local from Tianjin, and his family was relatively well off. At first, when facing Weibin, Qingxiang felt somewhat insecure. Not being good with words, she didn't know how to express herself. But Weibin treated their relationship very seriously and gradually. His sincerity allowed Qingxiang to open her heart. When Weibin learned about Qingxiang's background, he didn't look down on her rural origins or difficult family circumstances. Instead, he became even more protective and caring towards her. For Qingxiang, this was the first time in her life she felt she could rely on someone. The feelings between the two young people gradually deepened, and they began planning their future together with hope. In 1994, Qing Xiang was about to graduate from university. As an outstanding graduate from Nankai University, she was highly sought after by various employers. Finding a stable job was almost guaranteed. However, the person most excited about this was not Qing Xiang, but her father, Zhao Yuling. He had been waiting for 4 years, and finally his daughter was about to graduate. The prospect of her earning money, support the family, seemed within reach. However, Qing Xiang had 2 decisions of her own that surprised her father. First, she had been accepted into Nankai University's graduate program and wanted to continue her studies. Second, she and her boyfriend Wei Bin had developed a deep relationship, and they planned to get married after completing their graduate studies. When Zhao Yuling heard this, he was furious. In his eyes, 3 more years of study meant wasting time and money, and his sick son couldn't wait any longer. Moreover, he didn't agree with Qing Xiang marrying someone from so far away. Of course, it wasn't because he couldn't bear to part with his daughter, but because he knew that if his daughter moved far away, how could he conveniently ask her for money? However, Qing Xiang was very determined and had a clear plan for her future. She insisted that she must pursue her graduate studies. At the same time, she promised her family that she wouldn't ask for any money during her graduate studies, and would work part-time to contribute to the family. She also told her parents that as a graduate student working on projects with her advisor, she would earn money, sometimes even more than if she went to work immediately. Hearing this, Zhao Yuling reluctantly agreed. So Qing Xiang and Wei Bin began their graduate studies. During this time, in order to keep her promise to her family, Qing Xiang lived frugally and sent money home regularly every month. However, throughout this period, her parents never asked how she was living. They believed that it was only natural for children to send money to their parents. Qing Xiang's life during her master's was even more difficult than her undergraduate years. Wei Bin, seeing the hardships she faced, felt heartbroken. Due to her commitment to sending money home, Qing Xiang often had to rely on her boyfriend for support. However, the adversity only strengthened their relationship, deepening their bond and mutual understanding. The year 1997 marked a major turning point in the lives of Qing Xiang and Wei Bin, as they both completed their master's degrees. At the same time, the wave of studying abroad in the U.S. was surging, and they decided to seize this opportunity to expand their horizons and knowledge. With her outstanding academic achievements, Qing Xiang was fortunate to receive a full scholarship for a PhD program in the U.S. However, when her father back home heard the news, he was furious. He scolded Qing Xiang, accusing her of being ungrateful, saying that her parents had raised and educated her, but she didn't know how to repay their kindness. Despite her father's harsh words, Qing Xiang remained firm in her decision to go to the U.S. Perhaps from that moment, Zhao Yuling began to harbor a seed of resentment towards his daughter, allowing it to silently grow in the shadows. On the contrary, Wei Bin's family fully supported the couple. Before going abroad, they decided to get married. The wedding was held in Tianjin, and all the expenses were covered by Wei Bin's parents. Yet, in such an important moment in their daughter's life, Qing Xiang's parents did not attend. On one hand, they were dissatisfied with their daughter going abroad. On the other hand, it was rumored that Yuling didn't want to prepare a dowry for his daughter, and used that as an excuse not to attend. Even worse, Zhu Yuling took the 50,000 renminbi, about $6,000 bride price given by Wei Bin's family for his daughter. Wei Bin and his family could only grumble at the unreasonable actions of the in-laws, but they didn't realize that for someone like Zhao Yuling, there were no limits when it came to asking for money. To support their son and daughter-in-law's further studies, Wei Bin's parents spent 22,000 renminbi, 2,600, to prepare luggage and buy plane tickets for Zhao Qingxin. They never mentioned asking their son and daughter-in-law to repay the money. 6 months later, Wei Bin also wanted to switch to IT, and secured a self-funded scholarship for a PhD program in computer science at a university in the U.S. Taking this opportunity, Qing Xiang returned to China for a brief visit, and afterward, the couple began their journey of studying abroad in the U.S. together. Life in the U.S. was tough for Qing Xiang and Wei Bin. A college friend of Qing Xiang recounted, "I once visited them. Their frugal life was something many people back home could not imagine. To earn money and send it back home, Wei Bin worked at a Chinese restaurant every day after school. Qing Xiang never dared to skip a class or miss a day of school out of fear that the university might revoke her scholarship. Despite all the hardships, the couple worked tirelessly on their studies. By 1999, Qingxiang became pregnant. After much consideration, they decided to keep the baby. But because of their difficult financial situation, Qingxiang had to return to work in the lab just over 20 days after giving birth. The newborn, less than a month old, had to be left with neighbors as child care costs in the U.S. were prohibitively expensive. After a month of struggling due to financial pressure, the couple reluctantly sent their 50-day-old son back to Tianjin to be cared for by Wei Bin's parents. Under the weight of financial and academic pressures, Qingxiang and Wei Bin constantly faced significant stress. Especially after sending their son back to China, Qingxiang often cried when talking to her friends on the phone, saying, "I miss my child so much, but I have no other choice right now." While Qingxiang and Wei Bin were struggling with their lives abroad, their young son was fortunately well cared for by Wei Bin's parents. From the end of 1999 to 2002, for 3 long years, Wei Bin's parents raised their grandson with all their love. They never asked for any financial support and constantly encouraged their son and daughter-in-law not to worry and focus on their studies. They deeply understood the challenges that the young couple faced in a foreign land. In stark contrast was the attitude of Qingxiang's family. Her parents never once traveled to Tianjin to visit their grandson. Just as when she was studying for her master's degree, whenever her parents called, it was always to ask for money. They assumed that since their daughter was able to study abroad in a wealthy country, she must be making plenty of money. Zhao Yiling demanded more and more money from his daughter, claiming that the house needed to be rebuilt, and asked her to send funds. At that time, Qingxiang's life had become so difficult that she had to count every penny, but she couldn't bring herself to refuse her father's request. Somehow she scraped together $1,500 and sent it back home with filial piety. As soon as he received the money, Zhao Yiling immediately used it to build a grand new house in their hometown. He didn't hesitate to boast that the money came from his daughter, who was studying for her PhD in the U.S. 4 years quietly passed. By 2002, Qingxiang and Wei Bin finally completed their PhD programs. So Qingxiang and Wei Bin began their graduate studies. During this time, in order to keep her promise to her family, Qingxiang lived frugally and sent money home regularly every month. However, throughout this period, her parents never asked how she was living. They believed that it was only natural for children to send money to their parents. Qingxiang's life during her master's studies was even more difficult than her undergraduate years. Wei Bin, seeing the hardships she faced, felt heartbroken. Due to her commitment to sending money home, Qingxiang often had to rely on her boyfriend for support. However, the adversity only strengthened their relationship, deepening their bond and mutual understanding. The year 1997 marked a major turning point in the lives of Qingxiang and Wei Bin, as they both completed their master's degrees. At the same time, the wave of studying abroad in the U.S. was surging, and they decided to seize this opportunity to expand their horizons and knowledge. With her outstanding academic achievements, Qingxiang was fortunate to receive a full scholarship for a PhD program in the U.S. However, when her father back home heard the news, he was furious. He scolded Qingxiang, accusing her of being ungrateful, saying that her parents had raised and educated her, but she didn't know how to repay their kindness. Despite her father's harsh words, Qingxiang remained firm in her decision to go to the U.S. Perhaps from that moment, Zhao Yiling began to harbor a seed of resentment towards his daughter, allowing it to silently grow in the shadows. On the contrary, Wei Bin's family fully supported the couple. Before going abroad, they decided to get married. The wedding was held in Tianjin, and all the expenses were covered by Wei Bin's parents. Yet, in such an important moment in their daughter's life, Qingxiang's parents did not attend. On one hand, they were dissatisfied with their daughter going abroad. On the other hand, it was rumored that Yiling didn't want to prepare a dowry for his daughter and used that as an excuse not to attend. Even worse, Zhao Yiling took the 50,000 renminbi, about $6,000 bride price given by Wei Bin's family for his daughter. Wei Bin and his family could only grumble at the unreasonable actions of the in-laws, but they didn't realize that for someone like Zhao Yiling, there were no limits when it came to asking for money. To support their son and daughter-in-law's further studies, Wei Bin's parents spent 22,000 renminbi, 2,600, to prepare luggage and buy plane tickets for Zhao Qingxiang. They never mentioned asking their son and daughter-in-law to repay the money. 6 months later, Wei Bin also wanted to switch to IT and secured a self-funded scholarship for a PhD program in computer science at a university in the U.S. Taking this opportunity, Qingxing returned to China for a brief visit, and afterward, the couple began their journey of studying abroad in the U.S. together. Life in the U.S. was tough for Qingxiang and Weibin. A college friend of Qingxiang recounted, "I once visited them. Their frugal life was something many people back home could not imagine. To earn money and send it back home, Weibin worked at a Chinese restaurant every day after school. Qingxiang never dared to skip a class or miss a day of school out of fear that the university might revoke her scholarship. Despite all the hardships, the couple worked tirelessly on their studies. By 1999, Qingxiang became pregnant. After much consideration, they decided to keep the baby. But because of their difficult financial situation, Qingxiang had to return to work in the lab just over 20 days after giving birth. The newborn, less than a month old, had to be left with neighbors as child care costs in the U.S. were prohibitively expensive. After a month of struggling due to financial pressure, the couple reluctantly sent their 50-day-old son back to Tianjin to be cared for by Weibin's parents. Under the weight of financial and academic pressures, Qingxiang and Weibin constantly faced significant stress. Especially after sending their son back to China, Qingxiang often cried when talking to her friends on the phone, saying, "I miss my child so much, but I have no other choice right now." While Qingxiang and Weibin were struggling with their lives abroad, their young son was fortunately well cared for by Weibin's parents. From the end of 1999 to 2002, for 3 long years, Weibin's parents raised their grandson with all their love. They never asked for any financial support and constantly encouraged their son and daughter-in-law not to worry and focus on their studies. They deeply understood the challenges that the young couple faced in a foreign land. In stark contrast was the attitude of Qingxing's family. Her parents never once traveled to Tianjin to visit their grandson. Just as when she was studying for her master's degree, whenever her parents called, it was always to ask for money. They assumed that since their daughter was able to study abroad in a wealthy country, she must be making plenty of money. Zhao Yuling demanded more and more money from his daughter, claiming that the house needed to be rebuilt, and asked her to send funds. At that time, Qingxiang's life had become so difficult that she had to count every penny, but she couldn't bring herself to refuse her father's request. Somehow she scraped together $1,500 and sent it back home with filial piety. As soon as he received the money, Zhao Yuling immediately used it to build a grand new house in their hometown. He didn't hesitate to boast that the money came from his daughter, who was studying for her PhD in the U.S. For years quietly passed. By 2002, Qingxiang and Weibin finally completed their PhD programs. With her outstanding academic performance, Qingxing received a job offer from the prestigious American company Johnson & Johnson, with an impressive starting salary of $60,000 per year. At the time, this was a dream income for many Chinese people. As for Weibin, he was hired by a renowned software company. Although his salary wasn't as high as Qingxing's, he still earned around $35,000 annually. They finally saw a glimmer of hope, as it seemed they could have a stable life in the U.S. The most anticipated aspect was that their financial situation would soon allow them to bring their son to the U.S. to raise him there. After being apart for so long, Qingxiang missed her son dearly. Therefore, the couple decided to return to China to visit their family before officially starting their new jobs and to bring their son to the U.S. With their future looking brighter after overcoming numerous hardships, they were filled with hope for a better life ahead. Before the 2002 Lunar New Year, Qingxiang and Weibin returned to China as planned. Their first stop was Weibin's parents' house in Tianjin. As soon as she entered the house and saw her son after such a long time apart, Qingxiang was overcome with emotion and embraced him. However, the child cried and ran to his grandmother instead. This broke Qingxiang's heart. Nonetheless, she was deeply grateful to her in-laws for taking care of their son all these years. In gratitude, she gave them $10,000 to repay their kindness. Back in Shandong, when Zhao Yuling heard that his daughter and son-in-law were returning to China, he called constantly to urge them. What he wanted, of course, was nothing other than money. To pay for his son's medical treatment, he had spent all the money Qingxiang had sent from the U.S. and even incurred debts. Zhao Qingchuan, at 28 years old, still hadn't found a wife, and due to his epilepsy, he didn't have a stable job. Zhao Yuling was anxious, and went around asking families with daughters of marriageable age, hoping to find a wife for his son. At the time, a girl from a neighboring village who worked as a substitute driver seemed like a match, but her family demanded that they buy a house in the city. Upon hearing this, Zhao Yuling started plotting. This time, when his daughter returned to China, he would demand more money to buy a house for his son's marriage. Qing Xiang and Wei Bin had initially planned to bring their son along to Shandong, but as they were about to get into the car, the boy started crying and refused to go. Left with no choice, they left their son with his grandparents. When they arrived at Qing Sheng's parents' house without their grandson, Zhao Yuling and his wife were visibly unhappy. Though they didn't say anything, they were inwardly upset. They thought, surely their daughter and son-in-law were too proud to bring their child to the countryside. Suppressing their anger, they all forced smiles and sat down to a meal together. After all, it was the first time the son-in-law had officially visited their home. During the meal, when Qing Sheng mentioned her job in the U.S. and how she could earn $60,000 a year, Zhao Yuling's eyes lit up with excitement. He went straight to the point, demanding that Qing Sheng give him 80,000 renminbi, about $10,000, to buy a house in the city for her brother. Faced with such a request from her father, Qing Sheng wasn't surprised. Over the years, even while studying in the U.S., she had continuously sent money home to her parents. She had grown accustomed to this, but Wei Bin felt differently. He thought that even if they were her biological parents, they couldn't treat their daughter like an ATM. However, Wei Bin remained calm and tried to reason with his in-laws. He explained that the current house with its 2 courtyards was already quite good, and it would be enough for Qing Xiang's brother when he got married. Besides, he and Qing Xiang had just secured jobs in the U.S., and once they brought their son over, their living expenses would significantly increase. As soon as Zhao Yuling heard this, his face darkened, and he angrily shouted at this point. Qing Xiang tried to mediate between them, explaining that they truly couldn't come up with that much money right now. On this trip home, they had already given Wei Bin's parents $10,000, so they didn't have much left. After saying this, she handed her father $1,600, promising that once they were settled in the U.S., they would send more money. Unexpectedly, this frankness only fueled Zhao Yuling's anger. He yelled. He accused Qing Xiang of being ungrateful and heartless. Hearing this, Qing Xiang became emotional. She had bottled up her frustrations for years and finally let them out. She explained how she had saved every penny to send money home, paid for her brother's medical treatments, and even helped rebuild their house. Even while pregnant and physically weak, she had worked extra jobs to earn money. But none of this made an impression on Zhao Yuling. He continued to yell, demanding $3,000 as a deposit for his son's house, threatening that if she didn't give the money, she shouldn't think about leaving. Qing Xiang, overwhelmed by emotions, finally broke down and ran out crying. Seeing this, Wei Bin couldn't sit idly any longer. He had witnessed firsthand the struggles his wife had endured over the years. He confronted his father-in-law, telling him not to use his position as an elder to bully others. He added, after these firm words, he rushed after Qing Xiang. At this point, the conflict had reached its peak. Fearing that he wouldn't get any money, Zhao Yuling hurriedly told his wife to go calm their daughter down. However, Qing Xiang genuinely had no more money to give, and her mother didn't know what else to say. That night, Qing Xiang and Wei Bin comforted each other, reassuring themselves that in just 2 more days, they would return to the U.S., and this ordeal would be behind them. However, Zhao Yuling spent that night tossing and turning, unable to sleep. He kept thinking, if my son never gets married, the Zhao family line will end, and I will never be able to show my face to the neighbors again. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He recalled how Qing Xiang had once vowed, back when she was studying for her master's degree, that she would never abandon her family, and would always support her sick brother. Now, with her arrogant husband backing her, she no longer seemed dependable. Fuming with anger, Zhao Yuling muttered insults under his breath. The more he cursed, the angrier he grew, until his rage overtook his reason. In the dead of night, on March 26, 2002, while Qing Xiang and Wei Bin were sound asleep, they were brutally murdered by her father's sharp axe. On July 4, 2002, the Yantai Intermediate People's Court in Shandong Province held a trial for Zhao Yuling's murder case. In court, Wei Bin's mother sobbed uncontrollably, asking how Zhao Yuling could have been so heartless. The judge also questioned Zhao Yuling about his motive for the crime. Even at this point, Zhao Yuling showed no remorse. He stated, "My children grew up but couldn't meet my demands. What good are they to keep around?" He only regretted allowing Qing Xiang to study so much, saying, "Her education ruined her heart. She no longer obeyed me or helped her brother." That day, the Yantai Intermediate People's Court declared Zhao Yuling guilty of intentional murder, sentencing him to death, stripping him of his political rights for life, and ordering him to pay 10,000 renminbi, about $1,200 in financial compensation to the plaintiff. After the sentence was passed, Qingxiang's uncle and brother, Qin Quan, filed an appeal to claim Qingxiang's inheritance, specifically the $10,000 she had given to Wei Bin's parents. However, the court dismissed their claim. Later, the court inventoried Qingxiang and Wei Bin's belongings. Aside from their return tickets to China, they had only $1,000 left. They didn't own any other assets in the U.S. Finally, on October 28, 2002, Zhao Yuling was executed in Zhaoyuan, Shandong Province. Afterward, Su Guixin and her son, Zhao Qingchuan, left Zhezuangzi village, living in anonymity and renting an apartment in the suburbs. When a reporter later tracked them down, Su was working at a leather jacket factory, while Qingchuan had become an unemployed drifter. After that, there was no more news about them. Qingchuan's life was truly tragic. Looking back at her short life, one could say that she had continuously fought to overcome adversity. But the final outcome leaves one feeling profoundly sorrowful. This story is not just a heartbreaking case, but also a stark warning about the generational conflicts in a rapidly changing society. Hopefully from this tragedy, we can all learn valuable lessons to build a more just and compassionate society, where dreams and success are a source of pride, not a burden for every family. Story 2. In 2005, shocking news spread throughout Hunan Province, China. Liu Debin, a U.S.-educated Ph.D. holder, former university professor and doctoral advisor, serving as vice president of Hunan Provincial People's Government, was sentenced to death for murder his wife. The question arises, how could such a brilliant scholar and high-ranking official fall so far as to become a convicted criminal facing the death penalty? It wasn't until 2013 that this scandal, considered the most notorious among Chinese Communist Party officials, was fully revealed after 8 years of cover-up. A diary-style book published by Shanghai Publishing House brought this story to light, even though Liu Debin had already been executed in 2005. His case also set a record for the shortest time between filing an appeal and the final sentencing and execution. As a U.S.-educated Ph.D. with exceptional intelligence, his grave mistake led to the phrase, "as stupid as Liu Debin," becoming a common saying at Hunan Agricultural University, where he once worked, and it's still referenced to this day. Liu Debin was born in May 1953 in a small village in Hunan Province. His childhood was marked by hardship. His father was disabled, and his mother was seriously ill. Despite extremely poor study conditions, he always strived for excellence. His talent and diligence led to his election as the village's youth league secretary at just 18 years old. 1975 marked a turning point in Debin's life. Right after graduating from junior high school, he was fortunate to be admitted to Hunan Agricultural Institute, now Hunan Agricultural University. At that time, university admissions were based on recommendations from local organizations. With his good background, he was selected. University students then were called worker-peasant-soldier students, and Debin seized this precious opportunity to change his fate. Throughout his time at the university, Debin consistently proved to be an outstanding student with an insatiable thirst for knowledge. After graduating, he went on to become one of the first graduate students at Hunan Agricultural University, specializing in genetics and breeding. A crucial factor in his success was the mentorship of Professor Fan Lin, who later became the vice chairman of the Hunan Provincial People's Congress. Liu Debin was fortunate to be highly regarded by Professor Fan Lin, who provided him with many favorable conditions for his studies and research. By 1982, after completing his master's degree, he decided to turn down a job opportunity at the Ministry of Agriculture to continue teaching at his alma mater. At this time, Professor Fan Lin had secured a valuable study abroad opportunity at Kansas State University in the United States for Hunan Agricultural University. Liu Debin was chosen for this opportunity, becoming one of the first Chinese students to study in the U.S. after the Cultural Revolution. Before departing, he married Guoli Huang, his college classmate. 6 months later, his wife and their infant daughter were also permitted to join him in the U.S. There, Debin demonstrated tireless dedication to his studies. He devoted most of his time to improving his English, determined to overcome the language barrier. After 6 years of intense study and research, Debin successfully defended his doctoral dissertation in 1988. Despite receiving attractive offers from companies and universities in the US, Japan, and the Philippines, and even opportunities to work in Beijing, Liu Debin decided to return to his hometown in Hunan. He believed he couldn't forget the oath he took under the red flag before leaving to study, succeed, and return to serve the motherland. After returning to Hunan Agricultural University, Liu Debin achieved numerous notable accomplishments in scientific research. In particular, his research on wheat gene transfer reached international leading standards, making him the province's top expert in wheat breeding. For these outstanding contributions, Debin received special allowances from the State Council. With his exceptional work performance, Debin's career rapidly advanced. He successively held important positions such as Dean of the School of Agronomy and Vice President of Hunan Agricultural University. The organization department also highly regarded him and viewed him as a potential high-level leadership candidate for further training. However, just as Debin's career and scientific achievements were at their peak, his family life began to encounter turbulence. The relationship with his wife, which had initially been quite happy, gradually became tense. The main reason was their conflicting views on caring for Debin's parents. As a filial son, he always wanted his parents, who had endured poverty and hardship for decades, to enjoy a good life like his own now that conditions had improved. Moreover, he set high expectations for his wife and caring for his parents. Liu Debin wanted his wife to be as filial to his parents as he was, from serving meals to the elderly parents to caring for them when they were ill. These demands gradually created distance and conflicts in their marital relationship, but Li Wan was an intellectual woman. After returning to China, she continued working at the training center of Hunan Agricultural University, and had her own career, achieving certain accomplishments. At this time, their daughter Ting Ting was also growing up, and the burden of raising a child along with her research work made Li Wan feel pressured. Over time, this led to her growing discontent. These disagreements gradually deepened the conflict between Debin and Li Wan. From 1996 to 1997, not long after he became vice president of the Agricultural University, their relationship had deteriorated to the point of no return. Finally, in November 1997, they decided to divorce, with the agreement that Li Wan would have custody of their daughter. However, Debin couldn't have anticipated that once the wheel of fate started turning, it couldn't be reversed. Having experienced the pain of a failed marriage, he felt exhausted both physically and mentally. Looking back and analyzing the reasons for his marital failure, Debin came to a rather subjective conclusion. He believed that educated urban women, while having their own careers and willing to be good wives and mothers, were unwilling to take on the role of dutiful daughters-in-law. Therefore, he thought that choosing a rural woman with lower education would be different. This perspective of Liu Debin reflected a rather biased and stereotypical view of women's roles in the family. It also showed his deep disappointment with his first marriage and his desire to find a new relationship that better aligned with his traditional family values. One day in early 1998, after consulting with his father, Liu Debin decided to look for a second wife from his rural hometown. This wife had to meet 3 conditions. The lower the education level, the better. The plainer the appearance, the better. And she must be willing to care for Debin's elderly father, as his mother had passed away by then. With these new criteria for choosing a wife, in late 1998, Liu Debin met Chen Junong. She was a typical rural woman, average in appearance, 14 years younger than Debin, and from a village in Hunan province. She hadn't finished middle school and was still working as a farmer at home. In August of that year, through a relative's introduction, the 32-year-old Chen Junong met Liu Debin. She expressed her willingness to care for Debin's elderly father, a big plus in his eyes. Subsequently, Chen Junong officially came to Debin's home as a housekeeper, taking care of his seriously ill father. Over time, Debin's elderly father lavished praise on Junong. He said she was like his own daughter, attentive and devoted. These compliments left a deep impression on Debin. By the end of 1999, after more than a year of Junong caring for his father, Debin decided to officially marry her. Junong thus became the legal wife of the renowned university vice president. Their joy doubled when at the end of 2000, she gave birth to a son for Debin. It was the year of the dragon, and having a son made him extremely happy. He felt a deep sense of gratitude towards Junong, and his affection for her grew even stronger. More than a year later, Debin was promoted to vice president of the Hunan Provincial People's Government. As a result, the family of three moved to live in a spacious, 2,150 square foot apartment for provincial-level cadres on Dongming Road in Zhengzhou City. Their life was luxurious, with housekeepers and chauffeur-driven cars. In early 2003, through Debin's arrangement, Junhong got a job in the documentation office of the School of Agronomy at Hunan Agricultural University. Junhong had transformed from a rural woman to an urban dweller, from a housewife to a civil servant in a state institution. As her living circumstances changed, Chen Junhong's personality also gradually transformed. From someone accustomed to serving others, she began to show arrogance as the wife of a high-ranking official. She started criticizing family members, treating Debin's secretary like a servant, frequently ordering them to do this and that. If anything displeased her, she would scold them harshly. This change in his wife greatly disappointed Liu Debin. At this time, through an introduction from a former subordinate, he became acquainted with Zhang Mei, the sister of a forestry department leader in Xinjiang City, Hunan Province. Zhang Mei, a woman over 40, initially came to Liu Debin for help with work matters. However, after several interactions, Debin began to have feelings for her, a woman full of femininity and understanding. Gradually, the two began a secret affair. Although Debin thought he was acting discreetly, in February 2003, Junhong discovered traces of her husband's infidelity. One evening, when Debin returned home late from entertaining guests and went to take a shower, his phone left on the coffee table suddenly received a message notification. This incident marked the beginning of a series of crises in their marriage. Already suspicious of Debin, Junhong didn't hesitate to check her husband's phone. Her expression suddenly changed when she read an extremely affectionate message signed, "Your little sister who will love you forever." Enraged, she didn't wait for Debin to finish his shower before confronting him. Despite Debin kneeling down to beg for forgiveness, Junhong was unrelenting and slapped him several times. Nevertheless, Liu Debin continued his secret affair with Zhang Mei. This led Chen Junhong to constantly create conflicts at home. The situation became even more tense when Junhong received a call from an unknown number warning her to keep an eye on her husband and prevent him from seducing other men's wives, or else Debin would face trouble. The climax occurred on an evening in April 2004. When a friend of Liu Debin came to visit, he witnessed a horrifying scene. Junhong, completely disregarding the presence of the guest, chased Debin around the house with a sharp fruit knife. Debin had to flee in panic to avoid his wife's knife attacks. These events show that the relationship between Debin and Junhong had reached a dangerous level with violent and uncontrolled behaviors. This situation not only affected their personal lives, but could also potentially harm Debin's reputation and career. After Debin's affair was discovered, his relationship with his wife became extremely tense. Junhong's attitude towards her husband and his family changed completely. She began imposing strict rules to control Liu Debin, such as requiring him to return home immediately after work. If he was late, even by a little, she would create endless trouble. All his salary and other income had to be handed over to Junhong for management, and every expenditure required her approval. Moreover, she threatened that if Debin continued his relationship with Zhang Mei, she would report his wrongdoings to the provincial party committee and the provincial people's government, causing him to lose all honor. The situation worsened in mid-August 2004. When Debin went to Xinjiang City for a meeting, Junhong secretly followed him and rented a hotel room opposite Debin's. That night, she caught Debin and Zhang Mei in the act of adultery. After this incident, Junhong repeatedly sought out provincial leaders to report Debin's behavior, completely destroying their marital relationship. Realizing the situation was beyond salvage, Debin carefully considered and proposed a divorce, promising to pay Junhong a substantial compensation. Junhong agreed to this proposal. However, after careful consideration, she changed her mind. She declared to Debin that she would not divorce him, and if he tried to force it, she would expose his bribery, potentially leading to his imprisonment. Faced with these threats, Debin no longer dared to mention divorce. From that point on, Debin's family life became extremely tense and unstable. Compared to the relatively civilized arguments he had with Guoli Huan in the past, Junhong's attacks were much more violent and cruel. Whenever they argued, she not only verbally abused, but also physically assaulted Debin, sometimes slapping him, sometimes using sticks, forcing him to kneel and beg for forgiveness. She also used extremely vicious words to curse or force Debin to humiliate himself, determined to make him lose all dignity. Bullied and abused at home, Debin sought relief by confiding in his driver, subordinates, and even leaders in the provincial people's government. As a result, the story of his unhappy family life quickly spread throughout the provincial party committee and the Hunan provincial people's government. Many who heard about Debin's circumstances shared the same private comment. Debin's life was truly humiliating. Just as Liu Debin was being tormented by family issues, in June 2004, Xiang Yuhe, the 43-year-old deputy mayor of Xinjiang City, came to visit him. He was in charge of agriculture and had a direct superior-subordinate relationship with Debin. On the afternoon of June 15, 2004, Yu invited Debin to dinner under the pretext of reporting work. During the meal, the two toasted and chatted about work and life. After a few drinks, Debin shared all his family troubles. Seeing the provincial vice president trust him so much, Yu felt greatly honored. From then on, he frequently called Debin, either to report on work or to inquire about his family situation. This quickly brought the two closer. One day in October 2004, Debin's older brother and his family came from their hometown to visit him in Zhengzhou. That evening, Debin wanted his brother and family to stay at his home, but Junhong strongly objected. In the end, Debin had to reluctantly arrange for them to stay at a hotel. That night, he and his wife had a fierce argument. Debin, unable to fight back or curse, was so angry that he cried. The next day, coincidentally, Yu invited Debin to dinner in Zhengzhou. Debin recounted all the grievances he had endured over the years, then angrily said, "Rather than living a lifetime with such a woman, it would be better to find some thugs to cripple her. I'm willing to support her for life." Seeing the provincial vice president so angry, he flatteringly said, "If the vice president really has such thoughts, I can find someone to help." Yu's suggestion ignited a dark plan. Instead of dissuading him, he was ready to assist with Debin's dangerous intention. The conversation quickly turned into a cruel conspiracy, with the two deciding to find a way to permanently eliminate Qin Junhong. Over the next 2 months, Debin and Yuehe frequently communicated, exchanging ideas to perfect the plan to kill Qin Junhong. The situation became even more serious when Yuehe found Zhang Songxue, a fellow townsman from Tanghe County, Hunan Province, and promised him a large sum of money to carry out this criminal act. Zhang Songxue, an 83-year-old man, had a special relationship with Zhang Yu. He was trusted and valued by Yu, even being appointed as deputy director of an ecological agriculture company in Xinjiang. This position brought Zhang not only prestige, but also material benefits, including a private car. As a result, he always showed great gratitude and was willing to follow all of Yu's requests, including illegal and dangerous ones. After receiving the assignment from the deputy mayor around the time of the 2005 Spring Festival, under the pretext of accompanying Yuhei to give New Year flowers to Debin, visited Debin's home 3 times under Yuhei's guidance to identify Chen Junong, preparing for the future crime. To ensure safety, Debin, Yuhei, and Zhang only communicated through a single line from start to finish. Debin only contacted Yuhei, Yuhei only contacted Zhang, and Debin never directly contacted Zhang. In April 2005, one of Debin's nephews in his hometown got married. He sent 2,000 yuan, about $250, as a wedding gift. Unexpectedly, Junhong found out about this, and the couple had another fierce argument over it. This argument quickly escalated into violence, with Junhong in a fit of rage, attacking Debin with a fruit knife, causing injuries to his lower back and genitals. This bloody incident pushed Debin to the brink of despair and hatred. His determination to eliminate his wife became stronger than ever. In the following days, he repeatedly called Yuhei, urging him to take action immediately. By early June 2005, after thorough discussions with Zhang, Yuhei proposed 2 plans to Debin to carry out their dark conspiracy. The first plan was to pose as robbers, attack and kill Junhong at the house in the agricultural university. The second plan, more sophisticated, was to exploit Junhong's desire to buy a car to lure her out, and then strike. After considering the plans proposed by Yuhei, Debin began to take the first steps for his sinister plan. He secretly took the key to the house at the agricultural university from the housekeeper, when his wife was away, then asked the driver to make a copy. This key was then passed to Yuhei, and finally to the killer Zhang. To avoid detection, Zhang bought 3 new SIM cards from the Unicom network in Zhengzhou. He kept one for himself and gave the other 2 to Yuhei, one of which was forwarded to Debin. These SIM cards were used exclusively for communication among the three during the execution of the crime. In early June, Zhang, now with the key in hand, along with his accomplice Su Xiaorong, an unemployed young man, drove from Nanyang to Zhengzhou to wait for the right moment to act. However, their initial plan encountered an obstacle when they discovered that the housekeeper was always by Chen Junhong's side. Following Debin's instruction not to harm anyone other than Chen Junhong, they had to postpone the plan and switch to the second option. Meanwhile, Junhong had passed away and passed her driving test and asked her husband to buy her a car, but he refused. After being rejected, she scolded Debin for being heartless. Subsequently, Chen Junhong felt increasingly that her husband was cold and distant, so she said she had compiled a list of Debin's bribery incidents, which she was ready to send out. This terrified Debin, prompting him to call Yuhei and tell him to quickly eliminate his wife. Just as Yuhei had finished preparations, Debin began to have doubts. He couldn't bear the thought of his son losing his mother, so he decided to try one last time, demanding the so-called bribery list back. But Junhong told him, "Give it up unless you kill me. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me." These resolute words left Lu Debin completely hopeless. On June 7, 2005, Yuhei called Junhong and told her that someone was willing to spend 150,000 yuan, about $18,750, to buy her a car. He said this had been discussed with her husband, who agreed, and tomorrow they could take her to see the car and buy it if she liked it. Junhong was overjoyed and immediately agreed to go see the car the next day. Because he was busy with work that day, Yu carelessly used his regular work SIM card to call Junhong, instead of the Unicom SIM card that Zhang had prepared specifically for him. He couldn't have imagined that this small oversight would leave a clue for the police to quickly solve the case later. Early in the morning of June 8, 2005, Yu took 150,000 yuan from his savings and gave it to Zhang. This cash was meant to both deceive Junhong, making her trust and lower her guard, and serve as payment for Zhang and Su after the crime. Around 10 a.m., Zhang used the dedicated Unicom SIM card to contact Junhong, luring her out. The three sat in the Passat car that Yuhei had prepared in advance to go see the car. The bag containing the 150,000 yuan in cash was left in the car, with the zipper intentionally left open for Junhong to see, making her believe they were really taking her to buy a car. On the way, Zhang drove through many winding roads. When Junhong noticed they were going in the wrong direction, she questioned where they were taking her. Realizing the situation was about to be exposed and seeing that no one was paying attention to them, Su, who was sitting in the back seat with Junhong, suddenly strangled her until she lost consciousness. Then Su used a fake Type 64 gun to strike Chen Junhong's head, killing her. After driving onto Highway 107, Zhang drove to an abandoned parking lot. The two men pulled Junhong's body out of the back seat and stuffed it into the trunk. Then Zhang got out of the car and took a bus back to Xinxiang, while Su drove alone to Tanghe County to dispose of the body. That night, Su used sharp knives to dismember Chen Junhong's body, put it in sacks, added stones, and threw it into Hushan Reservoir in Nanyang. To provide an alibi for Debin to report to the police, at 2 p.m. that day, following Yuhei's instructions, Su used the phone dedicated for the crime to send a message to Debin's regular phone. "Your wife is with me. If you want her to live, quickly prepare 500,000 yuan, creating a scenario that Junhong had been kidnapped." When Debin received the message, knowing that Chen Junhong had been killed, he told the provincial government staff to report to the police that his wife had been kidnapped. The kidnapping of a provincial vice president's wife quickly became the focus of attention for the entire government system. Upon receiving the report, the deputy governor, who was also the director of the provincial public security department, ordered a thorough investigation. News of the case spread rapidly to Beijing, prompting a high-ranking official from the Central Political and Legal Affairs Commission to intervene, demanding the case be solved as soon as possible and a satisfactory explanation be provided to society. Responding to pressure from above, the Zhengzhou City Public Security Bureau immediately formed a special task force and concentrated all resources on the investigation, naming the case June 8th case after the date it occurred. During the investigation, the task force discovered an important clue. Besides calls from unknown numbers, there was a suspicious call from Xiang Youhei, deputy mayor of Xinjiang City, to the victim just one day before the incident. This discovery quickly led to Xiang Youhei being detained by the police for investigation. Realizing the situation had been exposed, Yohei quickly confessed to killing Chen Junong along with Zhang and Su, and revealed the mastermind behind it all was the provincial vice president, Liu Debin. At this point, the case of Debin's wife's murder was solved. On June 15th, the Procuratorate approved Liu Debin's arrest. The vice-provincial governor conspiring to murder his wife was not only shocking news for Hunan province, but also set a national record, the highest-ranking official to be charged with premeditated murder since the founding of the People's Republic of China. Subsequently, police recovered the victim's remains from the bottom of Hushan Reservoir. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Liu Debin quickly admitted to hiring hitmen to kill his wife. On July 22, 2005, the Zhengzhou Intermediate People's Court held a public trial. The defense lawyers for all four defendants acknowledged their clients' guilt in the intentional homicide, but argued that their clients were not the main culprits and requested reconsideration of the sentences. In his final statement, Liu Debin said he had studied for over 20 years and made certain contributions to the country, hoping the court would give him a chance to start anew, so that in his remaining years he could contribute to society and atone for his crimes. However, all was in vain. After 10 hours of trial, the judge determined that the actions of Liu Debin and the others constituted the crime of intentional homicide. On the afternoon of September 30, 2005, the Zhengzhou Intermediate People's Court announced the verdict. Liu Debin was sentenced to death in the first instance trial. His accomplices, Zhang Yuhei, former deputy mayor of Xinjiang City, and the two killers, Zhang Songxue and Su Xiaorong, were also sentenced to death. Right in the courtroom, upon hearing the death sentence, Liu Debin became very emotional, refusing to be handcuffed and shackled. He immediately declared he would appeal. On October 17th, the Hunan Provincial High Court rejected the appeal and upheld the original sentence. The Liu Debin case came to an end, but it left an indelible stain on China's judicial and political history. From a talented scientist and promising official, Liu Debin had fallen into the abyss of crime. Although many years have passed, the Liu Debin case is still frequently mentioned as a lesson about moral decay and the consequences of abusing power. It reminds everyone that position and power always come with responsibility, and that no one can stand above the law. Story 3. In 1994, at the peak of Japan's economic bubble, a horrific murder shattered the peace of a 14-story luxury apartment building in Tokyo's Katsushika district. Among the wealthy and elite residents, the family of 50-year-old Masao Matsuda became the center of a mysterious and thrilling tragedy. This case left the public bewildered for a time, but when the truth was revealed, many could only sigh in regret. In the Japanese music industry of the 1990s, Masao Matsuda was a respected name. As a senior executive in Sony's music division, he not only earned an impressive income, but also held considerable power in the entertainment industry. However, at 47, when his career was at its peak, he unexpectedly resigned to pursue his dream of opening a classical music recording studio. Those who have started a business understand that running a small enterprise is not only financially unstable, but also more demanding than being an employee. This decision marked not only a turning point in Masao's career, but also the beginning of a series of tragic events that no one could have foreseen. On November 12, 1994, Masao's sister, unable to contact her brother and his family, visited their apartment to check on them. Despite knocking repeatedly, there was no answer. At first, she simply thought they might be working late or out for dinner, and didn't think much of it. But by November 14th, after 2 days of no contact with her brother's family, Masao's sister began to feel that something was wrong. Around 1:30 p.m. that day, she decided to contact the building manager and ask them to open the apartment for inspection. Unexpectedly, upon opening the door and entering the living room, everyone was immediately hit by an overwhelming stench, forcing them to leave the apartment. At this point, they realized that something serious had happened, and they immediately called the police. When the police arrived at the scene, they discovered a heartbreaking sight. In the bedroom to the right of the entrance, they found the body of Minako, Masao's wife. In another room where light still flickered, their 23-year-old daughter Nezumi was also found deceased. However, there was no trace of Masao himself. The autopsy results showed that both victims died from suffocation, with marks on their necks indicating they had been strangled. Notably, there were no signs of struggle on either body, as if they had accepted death without resistance. The biggest challenge the police faced was the limitation of forensic technology at the time. which made it impossible to determine the exact time of death. They could only estimate based on the degree of decomposition that the murders occurred between November 10th and 13th. This wide time frame made the investigation difficult, especially when trying to identify suspects. While the investigative team was struggling to find clues, an elderly neighbor living next to the Matsuda family provided crucial information. The old lady recounted that around 7 a.m. on November 10th, she heard a woman's for help coming from the Matsuda's apartment. The screams gradually weakened and then fell completely silent. Although she had clearly heard the incident, she didn't intervene or report it immediately, fearing trouble for others and herself. According to her, there were no other unusual signs around that time. This information not only narrowed down the time of death, but also potentially helped identify the killer. The old lady's account provided several important details. According to her, the crime likely occurred on the morning of November 10th, and there were no unusual signs from outside. This suggested that the perpetrator was probably not an intruder. Combined with the lack of defensive wounds on the victims' bodies, the police deduced that the killer might have been someone familiar to the family. Currently, 2 of the 3 family members were deceased, with only Masao missing. The question arose, could he be the perpetrator of this crime? Following this line of investigation, the police indeed found a potential motive. To ensure the operation of his recording studio, Masao had borrowed 28 million yen, approximately $265,000, from a financial company, with a minimum repayment of 7 million yen, about $66,000 due soon. The immense financial pressure could have caused Masao to lose control, commit the crime, and then flee to escape responsibility. However, this theory caused controversy within the police investigation team, as many believed the case wasn't that simple. In fact, after thorough investigation, several points made this hypothesis questionable. Firstly, Masao's financial situation didn't seem dire. It was even quite stable. Evidence showed that his recording studio rented 2 large shops near Yurikucho Station, with a monthly rent of 240,000 yen, about $2,270, which Masao had never been late in paying. While this amount might not seem significant now, during Japan's economic bubble, it was a considerable expense. Moreover, Masao owned a Mercedes, and just 2 weeks before the incident, he had taken his family on vacation. During that trip, they stayed at the most luxurious hotel in the area, dined at high-end restaurants, and even attended several kabuki theater performances. All these details suggested that Masao was not experiencing financial difficulties, so the question arose, if he wasn't short on money, why did he need to borrow? The police investigation revealed that Masao had a habit of borrowing money to maintain cash flow for his business. Over a year earlier, he had borrowed several million yen from relatives, and within just half a month, he not only repaid the entire amount, but also added 200,000 yen, about $1,900 in interest. Notably, this wasn't the first time Masao had borrowed money, and he always repaid his debts on time. The 28 million yen loan that Masao took out 2 months before the incident was not significantly different from his previous loans, except for the slightly larger amount. If the motive for the crime was related to financial difficulties, it would have been more logical for Masao to take his own life if he couldn't repay the debt. So why would he harm his wife and daughter, and then flee? Could they have become a burden to him? This possibility seemed unlikely as Masao's wife Minako came from a well-educated and wealthy family. If necessary, borrowing money from her family wouldn't have been a major issue. Furthermore, their daughter Nozumi was an excellent student who, even before graduating from university, had been offered a job at a large company. Nozumi had happily shared that after starting work, she could earn money and support herself and her family. With such a wonderful wife and daughter, it's hard to believe they could have been a burden to Masao. Therefore, some police officers began to suspect that this might be a case of premeditated murder or kidnapping for ransom. When the police examined the Matsuda family's home, they discovered that all valuable assets had been taken, including the Mercedes. Moreover, the fact that large portions of hair had been cut from Masao's wife and daughter led them to different conclusions. Perhaps the two had been forcibly cut before the crime occurred, and the perpetrator used Masao's key to enter the house, commit the robbery, and harm the mother and daughter. The haircutting of Minako and Nozumi might have been to threaten Masao, forcing him to comply with the criminal's demands. This hypothesis seemed more plausible than Masao being in debt and killing his family. However, regardless of which theory was correct, The most crucial issue at this point was finding Masao. Initially, the police thought locating him wouldn't be difficult because his white Mercedes had disappeared. Tracing a car with a specific license plate and description would certainly be easier than finding a person. They believed that once they found the car, they would soon find Masao. But despite predicting correctly, the police underestimated the perpetrator's sophistication. Tracing the Mercedes' movements, the police discovered that on the night of the incident, November 10th, Masao's car had appeared near a hotel on a hill in Shiota district. When checking the hotel, they found a room reservation under the name Masao Matsuda. Masao was about 5 feet 4 inches tall, usually wore silver-rimmed glasses, had fair skin, and a refined demeanor, making him easily recognizable. However, after hotel staff viewed his photograph, they confirmed that the person who checked in that night was not Masao. Immediately upon hearing this information, the police suspected that Masao had been kidnapped. Unfortunately, nearly a week had passed since the incident, and room had certainly been cleaned multiple times, leaving no traces to investigate. Therefore, the police could only continue monitoring the Mercedes and Masao's room reservation information. Further tracing Masao's trail led them to 3 other hotels: Aji Hotel in Shimoda City, Shizuoka Prefecture, Aji Hotel in Hakone City, and Fujioka Hotel in Yamanashi Prefecture. At 2 of these 3 hotels, staff confirmed that the person who registered was not Masao, while the remaining hotels stated they weren't certain. This began to make the police uneasy. Based on experience, the police assessed 2 possibilities. First, the perpetrator had taken Masao's money and begun to flee, using his identity to book rooms. In this case, Masao might have already been killed. The second possibility was that Masao was still alive, but under close surveillance by the suspect. Either way, Masao's situation was certainly not favorable. Finally, the police found traces of Masao at a hotel in Nara City. When the investigative team arrived at the hotel and hadn't yet explained their purpose, someone who looked like a manager proactively approached them with a tense expression and said, "Officers, you've come at the right time. It seems a murder has occurred at our hotel." He then led the police to a room where everyone could understand his words. In that room, there were numerous stains of bodily waste on the bed. Although it had been cleaned, the unpleasant odor couldn't be concealed. Moreover, a blue electrical cord of unknown origin was found in the room. What worried the police most was that this room had been rented under Masao's name. A normal person wouldn't urinate or defecate indiscriminately in a room without reason. The investigating police suspected that Masao might have been suspended in this room, and before his death, he likely lost control of his bodily functions, leading to involuntary excretion. If this hypothesis was correct, the police's next step would be to search for Masao's body. Primarily, whenever Masao's room reservation information appeared at any hotel, his white Mercedes was usually traced to that city. This suggested that the driver was likely the perpetrator. Since the incident occurred in central Nara, if the culprit wanted to move the body, they would certainly need to use a car. Therefore, the police theory was that by focusing on tracking the white Mercedes, they would be able to find the real culprit. By estimating the fuel in the gas tank, they predicted that the perpetrator might have left Masao in Nara City, because if they wanted to dispose of the victim's body further away, they would have had to refuel, a process easily detected. However, what happened next overturned all predictions. After a thorough search, the police not only failed to find any trace of Masao, but the Mercedes also seemed to have vanished into thin air. Despite meticulously checking every gas station in Nara, they still couldn't find any clues. This mysterious disappearance added to the complexity of the case, raising new questions for the investigation team. In this situation, the police were forced to change their approach and try a new method. They decided to delve into Masao's social network, hoping to find clues from his close associates. However, upon thorough investigation, the police not only failed to identify any suspects, but also found the case becoming more complex. The Masuda family was exemplary. Masao was born in Matsumoto City, Nagano Prefecture, and like his wife Minako, came from a financially well-off family. Both studied music education at Shinshu University. They fell in love at first sight and were each other's first love. After marriage, their affection seemed to grow even stronger. Just 2 years after their wedding, Masao's career took a promising new turn. He successfully joined Sony's music planning department, marking the beginning of a challenging and opportunistic journey in music production. Faced with her husband's increasingly busy work schedule, Minako decided to give up her full-time music teaching career to become a part-time piano teacher. This not only reduced work pressure, but also gave her more time to care for the family, allowing Masao to focus entirely on his career. Of course, Masao didn't let his wife's sacrifice go in vain. During his 15 years at Sony, he had the opportunity to collaborate with many famous artists like Herbert von Karajan, the renowned Austrian conductor, and Leonard Bernstein, the American conductor, composer, and pianist. These achievements not only elevated Masao's name to new heights in the music world, but also significantly improved the family's financial condition. Despite owning considerable assets, the Masuda family lived a simple and private life. Outsiders could hardly guess they were wealthy. The root cause lay in how they raised their children. Nizumi, their only daughter, was taught from a young age about the value of frugality and compassion. Instead of spending on herself, she donated all her pocket money to UNICEF. Nizumi's attire was always simple, never extravagant or flashy. This lifestyle made the Masao family an unattractive target for any criminals intending to attack. However, while the police were racking their brains over the investigation's direction, an officer discovered a surprising detail from hotel reviews related to Masao's room booking information. Reading this, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was a review of a hotel on a hill in Chiyoda, Tokyo, dated November 10th, the night of the incident. The review was quite ordinary, stating that the guests stayed at the hotel to enjoy the delicious dumplings and tempura at the hotel's restaurant. Everything seemed normal, but the shocking part was that the reviewer's name was Masao Matsuda. This indicated that someone had impersonated Masao to book a hotel room. Earlier, hotel staff had confirmed that the person who checked in didn't resemble Masao. This was puzzling because according to the investigation, Masao was presumed dead, and if he had indeed been kidnapped, the reviewer could only be the kidnapper. But why would a kidnapper risk being discovered just to write a hotel review? If they wanted to leave a review, they could have used a pseudonym, so why use the name Masao Matsuda? This didn't seem like the action of a criminal trying to taunt the police, because if that were the case, they could have written something more challenging in the review. Therefore, it seemed that this review wasn't written by a kidnapper, but by Masao himself. But if so, what was the significance of him leaving this review? And could Masao's review contain clues to help solve the case? Initially, the police thought the same, but upon careful analysis, they found no hidden information in the review. Moreover, in 1994, the internet wasn't widely used, so hotel reviews typically didn't attract much attention. If Masao could actually access the internet and wanted to send a distress signal, sending an email to friends would have been much more effective than posting on a little-viewed hotel review forum. From this, only one conclusion remained. Masao wasn't under anyone's control. But if he wasn't being controlled, what was the story behind this case? To find answers to these questions, the police decided to thoroughly investigate Masao's travel itinerary. On November 10th, he was still in Tokyo. On the 12th, he moved to Shimoda Town, then to Hakone on the 13th, to the Mat-Fuji area in Shizuoka Prefecture on the 14th, and finally to a hotel in Nara City on November 15th. This journey seemed to follow no clear pattern. After consideration, the police decided to try their luck in Matsumoto City, Nagano Prefecture, which was Masao's hometown, hoping it might be his next stop. Surprisingly, before they could get there, at around 8 a.m. on November 19th, the Matsumoto City police received an emergency call. A cleaning staff member at a local hotel had discovered a man hanging from the ceiling when opening a room for cleaning. When the investigative team arrived at the scene, they confirmed that the man was none other than Masao Matsuda, whom the Tokyo police had been searching for. Upon examining the scene, police found a tape recorder beneath Masao's body. Inside was a fully played cassette tape. When the Tokyo police listened to this 40-minute recording, they finally understood the whole story. In the recording, Masao revealed that while people on the outside thought he was successful, there were failures that only he truly understood. Masao had persistently pursued his passion for Italian classical music and German symphonies, refusing to cooperate with new pop music genres. This led to his recording studio gradually declining to the point where it couldn't cover operating costs. At that time, Masao had to ask his wife and 4 close friends to co-sign for a loan of over 20 million yen, about $190,000, from financial companies. Initially, if he had just changed his business strategy, there was still a chance for his company to recover and repay the debt. But even when the financial situation worsened, Masao didn't want to give up his musical passion. He continued to adhere to the musical philosophies of Mozart and Richard Wagner. Unfortunately, the Japanese economic crisis hit like a massive storm, sweeping away Masao's final efforts to salvage his company's financial situation. The growing debt became an overwhelming burden. For someone who highly valued his pride like Masao, this situation was not just a financial challenge, but also a severe blow to his personal honor. While many people facing a similar situation might choose bankruptcy to start over, Masao found himself trapped in a cage of his own making. Instead of sharing the burden with his family, he chose to hide all difficulties behind a forced smile. He continued to maintain the appearance of a successful businessman, leading those around him to believe his music studio was still thriving. In Masao's mind, there was only one thought. Since such a shameful situation had occurred, the best choice was for the whole family to go to heaven together. Before carrying out this plan, Maisel wanted to make it up to his family. So a month before the incident, he took his wife and daughter on a vacation. They enjoyed delicious meals together and shared their final happy moments. According to the initial plan, on a peaceful morning when his loved ones were still sound asleep, he would take the whole family, including himself, quietly out of this world. He believed this was the only way to protect them from the pain and shame he thought he had caused. However, after his wife and daughter passed away, Masao couldn't carry out the rest of his plan. He even failed multiple times when trying to end his own life due to fear and hesitation. Finally, he decided not to leave immediately, but to drive alone for a few days, to gather the resolve to continue living. And indeed, Masao Matsuda did just that. The details of bodily waste and a blue electrical cord found by the police in a Nara hotel were traces of his unsuccessful attempt to take his own life. Some hotel receptionists also stated that the person who checked in didn't resemble him. When the police saw the body, they speculated that perhaps the act of taking his wife and daughter's lives had severely affected Masao's mental state, causing rapid weight loss. His skin had turned sallow, his hair and beard unkempt due to neglect, making Masao look completely different from before. At this point, the case was nearly solved, and everything turned out to be quite simple. Before finding the final answer, things often seem very mysterious. But when the details and truth are gradually revealed, perhaps things aren't as complicated as we imagine. If Masao Matsuda hadn't left the audio recording before his death, this case could have become one of the mysteries widely discussed in public. In the audio file, Masao Matsuda also expressed his wish to be buried with his wife and daughter. However, Minako's family did not agree to fulfill this request. In the end, they created a separate grave for Minako and their daughter Nezumi, hoping that mother and daughter would remain as close as they were in life and rest peacefully there. And that is the entire story of the Matsuda family case. A tragedy that occurred not because of hatred or greed, but due to misguided love and excessive pride. This case serves as a mirror reflecting the dark side of society, where the pressure to succeed and the fear of failure can drive people to extreme actions. It raises questions about the fine line between passion and obsession, between responsibility and selfishness. The story of the Matsuda family is not just a case, but a profound lesson about the value of openness and trust within a family. It reminds us that behind the perfect facade of each family, there may be painful secrets, and sometimes saving a life can be as simple as an honest conversation. When we think about this case, we see not only the tragedy of one family, but also the fragility of happiness and success. It makes us ponder the true values in life and how we define success and failure. Perhaps the biggest lesson from this case is that in life, no failure is too great to overcome, and no love is worth exchanging for the lives of loved ones. Story 4. We'll be exploring a case that occurred in 2004 in Osaka Prefecture, Japan. In an upscale residential area in the heart of Izumi City, there lived a wealthy family. The owner of the house was Kenji Ase, a successful 74-year-old businessman who held the position of chairman at a large textile manufacturing and trading company. His wife, Kiyo Ase, 73, was a devoted homemaker. This couple embodied marital bliss, having built their home together for 50 years and raised several children. Over time, their children grew up, married, and moved out. The spacious house became increasingly empty, eventually leaving only the elderly couple. However, this did not diminish their affection for each other. On the contrary, their relationship grew more intimate and harmonious. Throughout their decades together, they had never had a major argument. Both always knew how to compromise and understand each other. The ASE couple was renowned not only for their wealth, but also for their kindness. In the eyes of their neighbors, they were a benevolent and charitable pair. They often led local volunteer activities and were always ready to help those in need. As the chairman of a company, Kenji was known for his professional and dedicated work ethic. He always devoted himself to his work, managing the business with admirable caution and efficiency. The year 2004 marked a significant milestone as his company expanded its operations to neighboring cities. Under his wise leadership, the company continued to grow, promising a bright future ahead. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, signaling even greater successes in the near future. However, tragedy struck this couple. At 10 a.m. on December 4, 2004, the Izumi City Police Department in Osaka Prefecture received an emergency call. The caller was a man who reported that his parents, 74-year-old Kenji Ase and 73-year-old Kaios, had gone missing. He couldn't contact them by any means. The caller was the eldest son of the missing couple, and he feared something might have happened to his parents, urging the police to investigate quickly. The son informed the police that his father, Kenji, one of the missing persons, was the chairman of a well-known local company. The company was located right next to their private residence, so close that sounds could be clearly heard from one building to the other. According to the statement, the ASE couple was last seen leaving their home around 8:30 p.m. on December 3rd, the day before, and there had been no news since then. The son continued to tell the police that early on the morning of December 4th, he had gone to his parents' house but didn't find them. He then went to the adjacent company but couldn't find them there either. He had tried calling his parents but couldn't reach them. In his father's office at the company, he had discovered a blood stain. Therefore, he was certain something had happened to his parents and called the police. Immediately after receiving the report, the police force quickly deployed an investigation. First, they went to the company office, which was considered the main crime scene. There, forensic experts carefully collected blood and hair samples. These samples were immediately sent to the laboratory for thorough analysis. Parallel to collecting physical evidence, investigators began a series of interviews. They interrogated employees at the company, hoping to uncover important details about the Ase couple's last day at the office. They didn't stop there but expanded their investigation to include pedestrians, aiming to accurately reconstruct the couple's journey before they disappeared. To leave no possibility unexplored, the police carefully studied the likes and daily habits of the Ase couple. From this, they compiled a list of places they might have visited. Meanwhile, the family of the missing persons was not standing idly by. They actively participated in the search process, going to every place the Ase couple frequently visited. Moreover, they posted missing person notices on various media such as newspapers, television, and the internet. These notices included clear images of the Ase couple, along with detailed personal information, hoping that someone in the community might have accidentally encountered them and could provide valuable clues. When entering the Ase's house, investigators noticed it was very neat and clean. The walls and floors had no stains or marks. The furniture was tidily arranged. However, in the bedroom, the futon and blanket on the tatama mat were not stored in the closet. One corner of the blanket was turned up, not folded flat. Based on the couple's daily habits and other clues, it could be deduced that the ASE couple left the house at 8:30 p.m. on December 3rd, wearing their nightwear and with no intention of going far, possibly just going to the adjacent company. However, upon closer inspection, the police discovered important details. In the family's garage, a car worth 1 million yen, approximately $9,000, had disappeared. Although there was no sign of missing cash, a credit card and 2 Rolex watches with a total value of 1.4 million yen, about $12,600, were also gone. Based on the clues collected, this case seemed to resemble a break-in, theft, and kidnapping for ransom. Typically in break-in thefts, the victim's home would be thoroughly ransacked. But in the Ase's house, only a credit card, 2 watches, and a car were missing. This was quite strange, since the couple might have been kidnapped. The kidnapper might call to demand ransom. Therefore, the police stationed many officers at the Ase's home and company. Some stayed with the family, waiting 24/7 to see if the kidnapper would contact them. But after some time, no one contacted the family. The missing credit card also had no usage history. Therefore, the likelihood of this being a kidnapping was low. A day after receiving the report, a police officer on routine patrol in the southwestern part of Sunin City, Osaka Prefecture, spotted a suspicious car driving on the road. This car could be the missing vehicle from the Issei's home. The location of the discovery was about 12.4 miles, 20 kilometers, from the couple's house. After the discovery, this police officer hastily drove in pursuit. The car in front, upon realizing it was being chased, accelerated to escape. Finally, at an intersection, it managed to evade the police car. Due to the considerable distance from that car, the police officer couldn't clearly see the driver's face. After this incident, the police received new leads. Many people had seen that car appear near the Issei's house. Compiling information from multiple witnesses, the car had driven southwest along National Highway 26 for about 14.3 miles, 23 kilometers, then to Hanan City in Osaka Prefecture. If not for robbery, could it be an enemy seeking revenge? The ASE couple was quite well known in the area, and he was the chairman of a company with good development prospects. This might have caused someone's jealousy. Thus, the opponent had kidnapped them for revenge. Following this hypothesis, the police investigated nearly 100 people related to Kenji's company, but still without results. In recent times, the couple apparently had no conflicts with anyone. For days after the ASE couple went missing, their family received a message sent from Kenji's mobile phone. The message said that he and his wife were relaxing at a hot spring resort, so there was no need to worry. The message also stated that the blood in the company office was due to his wife's nosebleed. After receiving these messages, although the family immediately called him, the phone was turned off. Kyo's phone was the same. That day, the forensic results brought a significant turning point in the investigation. The blood and hair samples collected from Kenji's company office were confirmed to belong to him and his wife, Kyo. This discovery confirmed the worst fears. The couple had been attacked right in their office. However, strangely, no valuable items in the company were missing, leaving investigators even more puzzled about the motive of the incident. A few days later, an unexpected development occurred. When the family received a message from Kenji's phone, the message stated that he and his wife would return home after some time. This message, along with information from the police that the couple's car was moving around Osaka Prefecture, temporarily eased the family's worries. They began to hope that perhaps the couple was really on some kind of trip. After this message, there was no more news from the couple. The investigation also reached a dead end. Time passed until November 2009, 5 years after the ASE couple disappeared. At 1:30 p.m. that day, Osaka Prefectural Police, while investigating another case, discovered a suspicious car and 2 blue metal drums in a rented garage in Shinmachi, Hanan City. After opening these metal drums, they found 10 blocks wrapped in cloth and plastic bags under a layer of sand inside. 4 days earlier, the garage rental manager had received a rental request. A customer wanted to rent a garage to store belongings, so he went to the garage to choose an empty one. When he used the spare key to open the roller door of an empty garage, he was surprised to find a car parked inside. He felt very strange because this garage was clearly vacant, so why were there things inside? He couldn't remember renting out this garage. After returning to the company, the garage manager searched through many documents and found the rental contract for that garage. The last time this garage was rented was on December 7, 2004, 5 years ago. At that time, a customer signed a short-term 1-month rental contract with him. After the contract expired, the customer did not return the roller door key, and he could not contact them. Afterward, that garage was left empty like that with no new customers coming to rent. Gradually, he had forgotten about this until 5 years later when he remembered. At that time, the customer only paid rent and deposit for 1 month, totaling 62,000 yen, about $560. After the contract expired, due to no new customers coming to rent, the manager left the garage as it was without checking. He didn't know what was stored in the garage. When a customer came to rent during the process of choosing a garage, the manager opened the roller door of that garage. Then he smelled a strong odor. He discovered that this smell was coming from behind the car parked inside. He covered his nose and slowly approached the car. Then he discovered 2 blue metal drums behind the car, and immediately called the police. Initially, the police did not pay much attention to this incident. It took 2 days before they sent someone to the scene to investigate thoroughly. However, what they discovered that afternoon completely changed the nature of the investigation. When they arrived at the garage, the police discovered a horrifying scene. In the two metal drums, they found body parts carefully wrapped in thin plastic bags, then tightly wound with tape and buried in sand inside the metal drums. Forensic experts worked tirelessly to piece together the remains. The results showed that the victims were an adult couple. Both victims had been struck hard on the head. Notably, the woman had multiple bone fractures. However, due to the severe decomposition of the bodies, experts faced difficulties in determining the exact cause of death. The time of the crime also became vague, only estimated to be somewhere between several months to several years ago. After discovering the bodies, investigators expanded their investigation to the surrounding area, gathering information from the local community. According to residents, the rental garage area had been a source of trouble for a long time. Many people had repeatedly reported about an unpleasant foul smell often emanating from here. This explains why the bodies could lie there for a long time without being discovered. Residents also said that the garage rental business in this area was not very active, with many garages left empty for long periods, creating favorable conditions for the perpetrator to conceal their crime. A crucial turning point in the investigation came when the police checked the license plate of the car found in the garage. They were shocked to discover that this car belonged to Kenji and Kaios, the couple who had mysteriously disappeared years ago in Izumi City. This discovery connected two seemingly unrelated incidents, the mysterious disappearance, and the police had grounds to suspect that the two bodies in the metal drums were indeed the ASE couple. This hypothesis not only explained their sudden disappearance, but also aligned with previous clues about the attack in the office. According to the investigation, from December 4th to December 6th, 2004, immediately after the ASE couple disappeared, their car had moved along National Highway 26 from Izumi City to Hanan City. Then, the car continued to move to several other locations in the city. Through forensic examination, the identity of the two bodies in the garage was confirmed. They were indeed Kenji and Kaios. The time of death could have been the day after they disappeared. Additionally, the police found a half-used sandbag in the car in the garage, containing sand similar to that in the metal drums. The two metal drums showed no signs of rust or damage, still looking new on the outside. The garage renter was named Katsuwaki Suzuki, a 42-year-old construction worker. According to his boss, Suzuki was very serious about his work, had no absences, didn't gamble, had harmonious relationships with colleagues, and had never had any conflicts. Overall, he was a good person. The police suspected that Suzuki, the last person to rent the garage, was involved in this case. That afternoon, the police found him and conducted an interrogation. The results showed that 5 years ago, Suzuki had worked for a construction company in Senan City. At that time, this company was preparing to build a new house for the ASEI couple. He was also in charge of interior decoration work for this house. On December 7, 2004, for days after the ASE couple went missing, Suzuki rented the garage. After that, he cut off contact with the garage manager and did not return the roller door key. Although there were many suspicions about Suzuki, the Osaka Prefectural Police initially faced difficulties in gathering enough concrete evidence to charge him with murder. Moreover, the statute of limitations for prosecuting the crime of disposing of bodies had expired after 3 years, making direct prosecution unfeasible. Faced with this situation, the police decided to arrest Suzuki on charges of theft to control him first, then continue to gather evidence about him killing the ASEI couple. During the interrogation, Suzuki tried to deny any involvement in the death of the ASEI couple. He only admitted to parking the car in the garage, but insisted that I know nothing about the appearance of bodies in the metal drums. However, the police later found in the car the garage rental contract that Suzuki had signed on December 7, 2004, a Rolex watch warranty card, and some blood stains in the trunk. Additionally, when searching his house in Kizuka City, they discovered the garage roller door key that hadn't been returned to the manager, a credit card, and a pawn receipt for a Rolex watch worth 500,000 yen, about $4,500. Notably, the serial number of the Rolex watch recorded on the warranty card and pawn receipt exactly matched the serial numbers of the two missing watches from the ASE couple's home. The credit card was also confirmed to belong to this couple. After the incident occurred, this credit card had never been used. Based on this evidence, the Osaka Prefectural Police believed that the blood stains in the car trunk also belonged to the ASE couple. According to the available clues, the time of pawning the two watches was December 4, 2004, which was the second day after the Asi couple disappeared. They wanted to know how Suzuki had obtained these items. From the details of the initial investigation, the police began to envision the course of the crime. The unfolded corner of the blanket in the bedroom, and the fact that the Asi couple were wearing nightwear when they encountered trouble suggested that they might have been attacked unexpectedly late at night or early in the morning. Notably, there were mysterious messages sent from Kenji's phone after they disappeared. The police suspected that Suzuki was behind these messages, aiming to mislead the investigation and create the illusion that the couple was still alive. This could have been a sophisticated effort to buy time and conceal his crime. The blood stain in the ASE couple's office, previously explained as a nosebleed, was now reconsidered by the police as a sign of a violent attack. They speculated that after being attacked, the ASE couple were taken out of the office and then completely disappeared. The police believed that to evade guilt, the perpetrator cleverly used the victim's phone to send emails and messages, creating the illusion that they were still alive. This strategy was aimed not only at misleading the victim's family, but also the investigating agencies, creating a smokescreen to cover up the painful truth about the fate of the ASE couple. From this, the police believed that Suzuki had broken into the ASE couple's office with the intention of theft. During this process, the ASE couple living in the house next door heard the noise. They turned up the blanket, wearing their nightwear, got out of bed, and went to the adjacent company to check. As a result, in the office, they encountered Suzuki rummaging through their belongings. When he saw that he had been discovered, he angrily pulled out a weapon he was carrying and attacked both of them. Kyo, being elderly, couldn't dodge in time and was hit hard on the head, falling unconscious to the ground and creating a blood stain on the floor. Kenji was also attacked. Afterward, dragged both of them into the trunk of their car, then went into their house to search for more valuable items. Due to not being psychologically strong enough, Suzuki was afraid of being seen by others, so he hastily took the watches and credit card from the house and quickly fled. Faced with police questions, Suzuki denied theft and murder. He said that he only pawned at the request of a friend. Later, he also rented a garage and parked the car there at that friend's request. Regarding the identity of this friend, Suzuki was vague, only saying that he didn't know the person's contact information. A month and a half after Suzuki's arrest, the forensics lab confirmed that the shoes in the car trunk belonged to the ASE couple. Moreover, Suzuki's fingerprints and DNA were found on the two metal drums. Confronted with new evidence, Suzuki could no longer deny and admitted to disposing of the bodies, saying that he followed his friend's request to drive the car carrying the ASE couple's bodies to the garage, then placed the two people in two metal drums he had bought. However, he still insisted that he did not kill the couple and did not know how they were killed. 6 years after the incident occurred, although the Osaka Prefectural Police had not found the murder weapon and other direct evidence, after more than a year of investigation, had accumulated much other evidence. The police arrested Suzuki on suspicion of murder and theft. Moreover, of the 500,000 yen, about $4,500, Suzuki received from pawning the two Rolex watches. Most had been spent by him. As there was no evidence that he had shared the money with anyone else, the friend Suzuki mentioned was believed to be a lie he made up, and that person did not exist. Later, Suzuki admitted to part of his actions. He acknowledged using Kenji's phone to send messages to the victim's family. However, he still tried to deny guilt by claiming that this action was under the direction of another person, whose identity he did not reveal. Despite Suzuki's efforts to deny guilt, on December 24, 2010, the Osaka District Public Prosecutor's Office formally charged him with 2 serious crimes, premeditated murder and theft. Faced with these charges, Suzuki remained silent and refused to plead guilty. Although the prosecutor did not have much direct evidence, they had built a strong chain of circumstantial evidence to prove Suzuki's guilt. Suzuki was born in May 1967 in Osaka Prefecture. At the time, he was working for a construction company in Kizuka City, Osaka Prefecture, and living in an apartment provided by the company. At just 17 years old, he decided to drop out of high school. Afterward, he left his parents' home and began an independent life with part-time jobs. In the following years, Suzuki went through various jobs, from electrician to construction worker in Osaka Prefecture. In September 2003, at the age of 36, Suzuki was hired by a construction company in Sunin City, Osaka Prefecture, to do manual labor. This company was building a new house for a client in Izumi City. The client is the president of a textile company, Mr. Kenji Ase. Later, Suzuki began working in the Ace's yard. Although he had met the Ase couple, he only occasionally greeted them and didn't talk much. However, since Suzuki came to work here, a Rolex watch worth 400,000 yen, about $3,600, left in Kenji's car had disappeared. Next, another Rolex watch worth 300,000 yen, about $2,700, in the yard also went missing. After that, a large amount of cash in the couple's house had been stolen several times. As the house was under construction, quite a few people came and went each day. So the ASEI couple didn't know who had taken the items. But they were very angry and called to complain to the construction company owner many times. At that time, the company owner had suspected Suzuki and had questioned him, but he insisted he knew nothing. Due to lack of evidence, the owner couldn't deal with him, and the matter was left unresolved. According to the investigation, Suzuki spent very lavishly and without a plan. When he ran out of money, he didn't hesitate to borrow to maintain his luxurious lifestyle. As a result, by the end of 2004, at just 37 years old, he was drowning in debt of millions of yen, mainly due to overspending and consumer loans. The increasing pressure of debt pushed Suzuki to the brink. In desperation, he targeted the Ase couple's company as a solution to his financial difficulties. On that fateful night, Suzuki risked breaking into their company office, perhaps with the intention of theft. However, Suzuki's plan did not go as expected. He was caught by the Ase couple, possibly when they were at home, and heard unusual noises from the adjacent office. Faced with the risk of being caught and the consequences of his criminal act, Suzuki made a cruel and unforgivable decision to kill the Ase couple. 9 years after the incident occurred, the trial of Katsuwaki Suzuki took place at the Osaka District Court. He was charged with premeditated murder and theft. In court, Suzuki admitted to committing the crime but denied some details, saying that he only participated in theft, vandalism, and disposing of the bodies. Regarding the death of the ASEI couple, he still insisted that it was not related to him. The perpetrator was someone else. The police believed that Suzuki's motive for the crime was that he owed millions of yen, so he broke into the ASEI couple's company to steal. As a result, he was discovered and fearing exposure, he killed the ASEI couple. Moreover, the friend Suzuki mentioned did not exist. This was just a false statement to escape punishment. After a month of trial, the court pronounced its verdict. The defendant Katsuhaki Suzuki was found guilty of premeditated murder and other charges and was sentenced to death. However, he did not accept this sentence. Hoping for a reduced sentence, he appealed multiple times to higher courts. The appeal process went through the Osaka High Court and finally to the Supreme Court of Japan. Throughout these years, the case continued to attract public attention, with many people closely following the developments of the appeal process. Finally, in 2017, the Supreme Court made its final ruling, upholding the death sentence for Katsuhaki Suzuki. To this day, he remains imprisoned in Osaka prison. Story 5. We'll explore a case that occurred over 10 years ago in China. The central figure in this case is Yuan Baojing, a legendary businessman who, in just a few short years, went from having nothing to becoming a billionaire with assets worth billions of dollars. Yuan Baojing was born in 1966 to a poor family in Liaoyang, Liaoning province. As the third of 5 siblings, he nurtured a desire from an early age to change his fate through education. His goal was to gain admission to a prestigious university in Beijing. When the college entrance exam came in 1983, Baojing's, while not low and sufficient for many universities, still fell short of the threshold for the prestigious institutions in Beijing he had dreamed of. Instead of giving up, his iron determination drove him to choose a more challenging path, staying back for another year of study. After 2 years of relentless effort, Baojing's hard work finally paid off. In 1985, he realized his dream by officially becoming a student at the China University of Political Science and Law. It's worth noting that at that time, higher education in China was not yet widespread. Most people only completed high school before either continuing to vocational college or entering the workforce directly. University students like Bao Jing were a rare phenomenon, especially those admitted to prestigious schools in Beijing. This achievement alone was enough to predict that his future would be extremely bright and promising. With a heart full of hope for the future, Bao Jing boarded the train to Beijing. On this journey, he happened to meet a fellow countryman from Liaoyang named Wang Jing. Wang Jing, in his imposing police uniform, exuded an air of dignity and charisma that captivated Bao Jing, a young man who had never set foot in a university classroom. Out of admiration, he volunteered to carry Wang Jing's luggage, and from there, a conversation between the two young men began, lasting throughout the journey in a cheerful and friendly atmosphere. Wang Jing was born in 1958, 8 years older than Bao Jing. In 1976, he went to work in the countryside. 2 years later, in 1978, he successfully passed the entrance exam to a police academy in Dalian. After graduating, he was assigned to the Criminal Investigation Unit of the Liaoyang City Police Department. With enthusiasm, Wang Jing regaled Bao Jing with interesting stories about his police work, and Bao Jing listened with curious and fascinated eyes. It could be said that in 4 or 5 years of work, thanks to his efforts and luck, Wang Jing had built a reputation in the police circle in Liaoyang. He had participated in investigating and solving many major cases, including a gun theft and a brutal murder of a family of 3. Even in the middle of the night, he had bravely confronted an armed criminal alone and successfully arrested him, earning him a second-class medal and widespread fame. As for this trip to Beijing, it was because he had been selected to undergo advanced training in Beijing for 2 years. Wang Jing was also very proud when he talked about this. Seeing Wang Jing's achievements, Bao Jing was deeply moved. In fact, these two young men had something in common. They were both extremely eager for success and determined to rise up in life. When parting on the train, they encouraged each other, both hoping to succeed in their studies in Beijing in the future. Over the next 2 years, Wang Jing and Bao Jing frequently found ways to meet. Through these meetings, Wang Jing gradually understood more about Bao Jing's challenging student life. To cover his living expenses, Bao Jing used almost all of his free time. He accepted jobs transcribing book manuscripts for professors, earning about 30 cents for every 10,000 characters. He also wrote addresses on envelopes for large companies, earning about 75 cents for 1,000 envelopes. By accumulating these small amounts, Bao Jing eventually bought a tricycle, opening up new business opportunities as he began delivering goods across Beijing. In addition, Bao Jing showed remarkable business acumen. During holidays like Christmas or New Year's, he quickly seized opportunities, selling greeting cards and postcards right on campus. At the start of each new semester, he would bring specialty products from his hometown to sell at school, easily earning enough for round-trip train tickets. Each time, Wang Jing would jokingly tell Bao Jing, "When you become a big boss one day, don't forget this, brother." Time flew by like the wind. After completing his advanced course in Beijing, Wang Jing returned to his hometown in Liaoning. The two friends promised to meet again in the future. At parting, their mood was both nostalgic and full of hope. As for Bao Jing, he graduated from university in 1989. With confidence and iron determination, he quickly found a job at a bank in Beijing, a position considered a golden rice bowl at that time. Meanwhile, he also found his happiness in marriage to a Beijing girl. In his early 20s, Bao Jing had settled down in the capital. However, not long after, he realized that this stable job coveted by many was not his ultimate goal. In 1992, Bao Jing made a bold decision that surprised many. He resigned from the bank to establish the Jinhao Industrial Development Company in Huiru. This was a crucial turning point, laying the foundation for his future business career, and also the precursor to unforeseen events in the future. It must be acknowledged that Bao Jing was a man of vision and decisive action. Although his company was newly established with limited capital and no resources, he turned his attention to scientific research achievements overlooked by universities and research institutes. These were technologies that had been invented, but not yet brought to market in China. Finally, Bao Jing bet on a promising project, black fungus cultivation. He boldly used all 200,000 yuan, about $31,000, of raised capital to obtain the patent rights for cultivating this precious fungus. After half a year of patient waiting, the first harvest was reaped. The unique value of this fungus was quickly recognized by the national market, bringing in direct profits exceeding 2 million yuan, about $310,000. This was the first big money Bao Jing had ever made in his life, marking a significant milestone in his career. 2 million yuan in the 90s was indeed an impressive figure. However, for Bao Jing, this was just the beginning, because he nurtured much greater ambitions. In the context of China undergoing rapid economic development, Baojing quickly shifted his attention to the capital market. He began a bold strategy of buying out companies on the brink of bankruptcy, then gaining control of some well-known pharmaceutical factories, and using these successes as leverage to carry out larger-scale fundraising and acquisitions. In reality, these moves carried enormous risks. A small mistake could lead to complete collapse, but Baojing proved his talent by overcoming all challenges. The assets of Jinhao Company increased dramatically. By 1996, the company's total assets had reached the impressive figure of 3 billion yuan, about $465 million, with over 60 subsidiaries. Baojing's business map had expanded significantly, and his reputation began to resound throughout the country. He was dubbed the King of Acquisitions,